Oh my god, I'm psyched for this video, yas. Hi, I'm Jazz and welcome back to my channel. Today we have my 2020 favourite books video. I'm so excited. Last year I did not make one of these videos because I was like slumping with booktube, so I've been so excited to make this video. It's been hard. I have read so much more than I usually read this year. It is the 29th of December, so I'm doing this a tiny bit early, but I'm going back to work next week, so I'm not going to be able to do it then. This year I have read 75 books. 75 so far. Maybe I'll make it to 76. I don't know. That's mad to me. Last year I scraped 50. I already got like a tiny bit over 50, but 75, I never thought I would ever be able to read that many in a year. I am going to be doing a stats video, so you know, look out for that at some point. But for now, I'm going to go through my top 10 of 2020, boop, boop, with some honourable mentions because there have been too many good books this year. So these are in no particular order. They are split into fiction and non-fiction, but apart from that, they're in no order. Actually, before we start, I just wanted to mention, because as I said, I am filming this on the 29th of December, I want to give 2 honorary mentions to 2 books that I'm currently reading, so can't put them in the official honorary mentions. What is this video? But I wanted to briefly mention them because they are both incredible. I think they could be favourites, but I haven't finished them yet, so I can't fully declare. So the first one is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. Fantastic. Thriller like I've never read a thriller before. It's a thriller focusing on gentrification. Incredible. I won't say more because I haven't actually finished it yet, but look out for a review of this one. And then the second one I'm listening to on audiobook at the moment, and that is This Green and Pleasant Land by Aisha Malik. I am seriously blown away by that book. It's fantastic. It's basically following a man called Bilal, and his mother's dying wish was to ask him to build a mosque in this small English rural village, and it's about his experience doing that and the racism of small communities in Britain, and it's fantastic. And again, look out for a review of that when I finished it. Okay, right, on to my actual favourites of books that I've actually completed. Okay, the first book is going to be no surprise to anyone because I feel like this book has just been so popular this year and it's so rightly deserved, and that is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I have a full review of this on my channel, so I'll link it up there. This follows Camino and Yayyy. Camino lives in the Dominican Republic and Yayyy lives in New York City. And they are sisters, but they don't know the other one exists. Their father is basically living 2 lives and has 2 families, but each family doesn't know about it. Camino and Yayyy are united when their father unfortunately passes away in a plane crash. This book was everything. I think the thing that hit me the most was the way it depicted grief and the raw aspect of grief. Also the family bonds and the sisters coming together, and it's such a unique sister relationship, and the secrets that families can hide, and it also has a casual queer relationship, the different perspectives of 2 black sisters. There are so many great things about this book. I just is that going to be all this video is? Me just I highly urge you to pick this up if you haven't already. It's a novel set in verse, so it's super quick to read. Elizabeth Acevedo is definitely a new favourite writer for me. I also read With the Fire on High this year and loved it. I was like, which one do I put in my favourites? So hard. I will say, it is really raw. It is really hard to read in terms of the grief. So if you have recently experienced loss, maybe stay clear for now, but it is definitely one to have on your radar for sure. Please read it. There's someone at the door. Why do they always knock when I'm filming? Okay, so the second book that has reached my favourites is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. Oh my god. If you watched my November wrap up, you'll see how much I flusteredly, is that a word? Talked about this book. I loved it so much. I see why it is the most iconic YA thriller. So good, so good. This book is about the murder of a schoolgirl called Andy Bell. The case has been closed. It's very well known that her boyfriend Taussig is the one who did it, but Pip, who we follow, is like, I'm not convinced. So decides for a project at school to look into the case. The amount of red herrings in this book, like I was constantly like guessing and looking and twisting and turning. Also, Pip as a protagonist is doing that too. She's not like, or not ignoring the obvious or like jumping to immediate conclusions. She's like analysing everything, which was really satisfying. I didn't guess the ending. I loved the amount of twists and turns. Fast-paced YA thriller. YA thrillers are becoming a new fave. Just here we go again with the deep breathing. If you're into YA thrillers and you haven't read this yet, resolve that issue. Solve that case. Read this book. Okay, so my next favourite I listened to on audiobook, and this author is very much a new fave author again for me. It was so hard to pick between the two books I've read of hers this year, but I have gone with the first one I read, and that is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. I also read Allegedly, and both of them absolutely, completely blew me away. But we're going to focus on Monday's Not Coming. So Monday's Not Coming is also a YA thriller and it focuses on Claudia, and her best friend Monday has gone missing, but no one else seems to care that she's gone missing, and Claudia is determined to find out where is Monday, what's happened to her, what's going on. We follow before, like, and after, but we don't really know what the before and the afters are. Tiffany D. Jackson's writing is just phenomenal. The characters and the depth of her characters are like genuinely so fantastic. In this book in particular, the focus on friendships and the way it depicts friendships was fantastic, and like also the actual plot is so addictive to read. Like I couldn't stop listening to it, and that's when I know like a book, especially on audiobook, if I'm like making myself hoover to read a book, I know that it's a good book. There's a major plot twist. I didn't guess it. I had no idea what was happening. It was amazing. Like, the pace is fantastic. Tiffany D. Jackson's thrillers are just genuinely on another level. Like, I am so excited to read more of her books. I will say, check out the trigger warnings. I'll put the trigger warnings all down below, so if you are fancying one, have a read first, just in case. But if you haven't read a Tiffany D. Jackson book yet, and you're like eyeing them, please do it. Read it. So good. They're so good. Okay, book number 4, I actually have an advanced reader copy of, but I'll put the main cover here as well just so you can see it. And that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Here's the actual cover. Okay, cool. So this book is not a light book. We follow Vanessa on 2 timelines. Is that a fave thing for me? Why is everything 2 timelines? Let me just take a moment to contemplate that.
A few moments later.
How strange. Anyway, we follow Vanessa, who has been groomed by her teacher. We follow her in 2 timelines. One of the timelines is when she is at school when it is happening, and the second timeline is in 2017, I think, and it's on reflection of it happening. Straight away, I just want to say there are trigger warnings for sexual assault and rape, so definitely tread cautiously if you are interested in reading this book. I think it was handled extremely well. So what really stuck out for me with this book is the way it discusses the Me Too movement and the way it discusses victimhood. It's not clear cut, like people will call her a victim, people will say like Vanessa, she is a victim of rape, of sexual assault, of being groomed by her teacher, but in her head it is so much more complicated than that, and it very much discusses like consent and like thinking you can give consent and like thinking she is giving consent but she's actually like in retrospect thinking about things, and it discusses how complicated victimhood and the idea of being a victim is. Narratives like this can very easily be victim and that's it, but this paints it in a so much more complex picture, as I can imagine it would be so complex to kind of work through if you had experienced that, and that is why it has reached my favourites, because I haven't stopped thinking about this book since I read it back in, February I think, and it is obviously now December, so it has definitely made a lasting impact. I'm pretty sure this was Kate Elizabeth Russell's debut, so I am like eager to see what she writes next because this was fantastic. Okay, my 5th favourite book of the year is Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera. So this book had been on my radar for quite a while, but I'd never made the leap to actually pick up a copy until Paige from In Between Pages recommended it as one of the underhyped LGBTQ plus books in that 2-part series that I did, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna buy it. So I bought it, and I am so glad that I bought it. So this follows Juliet as she does a sort of summer internship with her favourite author in Portland. It discusses her kind of struggles of coming out to her Puerto Rican family, and she's so worried about what will come of that and if they'll still love her. It also very much heavily, and I think this is what the main focus of the book really discusses, white feminism and how harmful that can be for women of colour. Juliet, as I've said, is gay, which is excellent. There's also a polyamorous relationship, which is really interesting because I've never seen that in a book before. I think the way that it was set out and laid out and just generally talks about these issues through the book and through the actual plot of the book was fantastic. It did it in a very much coming of age. Juliet is trying to figure out who she is and where she kind of sits in the world, and kind of the way that the world in turn treats her. And yeah, it is fantastic. If you have been eyeing this book as I have and you haven't picked it up yet, pick it up. Okay, we have one more fiction book and then we're moving on to non-fiction. And my sixth favourite book is Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. So this is a middle grade novel in verse, and it follows Juliet and her mother, who are basically forced to move to the United States due to the conflict in their home in Syria. It very much explores what home means, what family means. It discusses all the issues surrounding immigration and stigma and stereotypes surrounding that. It discusses familial relationships, both in close contact and her figuring out new family, with her aunt that she's an uncle and cousin that she's now living with in the United States, and also trying to maintain relationships with her family back home in Syria. It also really discusses the view that Western countries have on Middle Eastern countries and the expectation that in Middle Eastern countries there'll be conflict, and so it's no surprise when there's conflict there. But then if there's conflict in the United States, for example, it's absolutely horrifying, and it kind of unpicks that thought process, and I think it did it really well, and I think it did it really accessibly because it's a middle grade. It starts introducing these topics in a really great way, and honestly I don't read too much middle grade, but this is one of my favourites. It is such a great book and you definitely will not regret reading it. Okay, we are on to non-fiction. So the 7th book on my list, I don't know where it is. I'm very unsure, but I've put a picture here, and that is the Bi-ble, the Bi-Bull, essays and narratives about bisexuality. This book, this is volume 1. There are 2 volumes, and I'm so excited to read the 2nd volume next year. We have it in the house somewhere. Again, I don't know where it is, but it very much discusses everything to do with bisexuality. Each essay is very individual, very personal reflections on bisexuality. I really enjoyed the variety of people that wrote the essays. There is quite a major focus on intersectionality, which was great to see, and how bisexuality comes into race and comes into gender. I also really enjoyed that actually not every essay was written by someone that currently identifies as bisexual, either they identified as bisexual in the past, or I think it's right in front of me. I think it's right in front of me. I found it! It literally wasn't lost, was it? What a fool. Anyway, here it is. So each essay focuses on something very different. I think the best way to give you a synopsis of this book is to just read out a few of the titles to kind of show the broad range that it covers. Stuck in the Middle, being bi and non-binary. California, Here I Come, how the OC helped me understand my bisexual identity. Not Like That, Like This, bisexuality, sex and chronic illness. However it came to be, on being both trans and bisexual. 5 times I felt invisible as a bisexual fan, and 1 time I didn't. Girlfriend Wanted, bisexuals need not apply. On being black and bi-furious. Honorary lesbian, it's a straight man's world. Jigsaw, on bisexual representation in LGBTQ plus history. Revelations on sex, sexuality and religion. I could keep going, but I will stop. I hope that shows you the kind of broad range that this book covers. I felt seen. Seen! If you're bisexual, I think you should read this book. If you're not bisexual, I think you should read this book. I think you should read this book. I loved it. Okay, so the 8th book on my list is one that I only finished this month, so I'm really glad that I waited to do my favourites video because, oh my god. And so this was also an audiobook, and that is Sitting Pretty by Rebekah Taussig. I gushed about this book in my December wrap-up. I basically stumbled upon this book on my library book audiobook app, and I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And so I read it, and it just was fantastic. It covers so many topics surrounding disability and surrounding Rebekah's experience of being disabled. It talks about ableism, and it talks about like the complications of kindness and how able-bodied people thinking they're being kind, but it's really not kind, it's actually just ableist assumptions. It talks about like strong independent women and how like that can erase some people, and how actually an independent dependent kind of relationship is equally so valid, and so like yes, that's a good thing too. Each chapter sort of focuses on a different kind of aspect, which was really interesting. It talks about feminism and how important inclusive feminism is, and how disability and disabled people are so often forgotten within that context. As an able-bodied person, it was also so informative, and I learned so much. I am questioning my own ableism, my own automatic ableism, and kind of really questioning what I know about disabilities and trying to learn as much as possible. Highly recommend, please read this book. Thank you very much. Okay, the 9th book on my favourites list is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. Hardly a surprise. I feel like everyone has loved this book this year because it's fantastic. If you don't know, it's a memoir manifesto. It follows George's experiences of growing up being black and queer, and it really discusses the gender binary, gender norms, how that fit into their family. It's very much like personal reflections, but kind of very much targeted at a young adult audience, which I really enjoyed. I really loved that this memoir is like a memoir specifically for young adults, which isn't something you see overly often. The audiobook is narrated by George themselves, which is amazing. We love it. And it also genuinely does like add more, like it adds more to the story because you can hear their intonation, you can hear their thoughts and like really their reflections as they're reading their own words. It's like such a great experience. It discusses so many things like toxic masculinity, it discusses family and consent and brotherhood. It's very much written for queer black boys to kind of look at themselves and unpick the expectations of like their gender, their sexuality, and kind of like their masculinity and what masculinity means to them. If you haven't read this book yet, do. Okay, the 10th and final book on my favourites list before we go very swiftly to the honourable mentions is My Name is Why by Lemn Sissay. This is a memoir that is basically Lem's account of growing up black in the UK care system in the 80s. It depicts and really shows the system that is meant to be supportive and really isn't, and it actively is just not supporting children, specifically children of colour. Sorry if that's a bit bright, the sun has decided to come up. It's hard not to feel anger and despair at this story because it's so heartbreaking, and the audiobook especially is split into like Lem's accounts and memories, and then also like social service documents being read out, and like the way that they are kind of scattered throughout provide proof and evidence that he was not only denied like his family but his real name, his heritage, and the way that they're interspersed with his accounts is truly just both heartbreaking but excellently written and like beautifully written. Honestly, I can't sing enough praises about this book. It is hard to read, but essential to read, I think, especially if you're in the UK. The only depiction of the UK care system I'd had growing up is Tracy Beaker, which depicts it in a very positive light in comparison to this book. So I would highly recommend giving this one a read, even though it's super hard to read. Okay, that is my top 10 favourites. So many good books. Like, I can't even tell you how hard it was to narrow that down to 10, which is why I'm giving you 5 quick bonus extras. I'm not going into details, I'm just going to name them. These were also 5 books I read that were fantastic. So my 5 honorary mentions: You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. So good. Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. Told you it was in my honorary mentions. Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. The Clothesline Swing by Danny Ramadan. And Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Whew, all so good. All could have made the cut, but I've read too many good books this year, so what are you gonna do? And that is my favourites. Have you read any of them? Please come and chat with me in the comments if you have, and let me know just like one of your favourites. I'm not gonna say your favourite because that is too hard and no one will answer because it's just too hard. But let me know just one of your favourite good books that you've read this year, and I will add them all to my list to read next year. Thank you so much for watching. I am now off to film my most disappointing reads. I hope you had a good reading year. I hope you have a good start to your reading year in 2021, and I will see you in a new video. Bye. Goodbye.